This funny little thing that we call love. Oh, it gives you butterflies. It makes your stomach hurt. You do so many different things that you never thought you would do. Why is that? Well, my next guest, Don Massler, gives the biological reasons behind love. So as you're snuggling in with your honey for Valentine's Day, take a listen and get some more information. Hey, Don, I had an incredible time just preparing for this interview, reading over the information and getting information about you and your book. And then what I found so incredible is that there are so many different things that play into why we do what we do, why we say what we say, and the whole dating piece or just getting involved. So how did you come about finding this information and then deciding to put it all in your book?
My first book, From Heartbreak to Heart's Desire, was all about the troubles I had with relationships. Mm-hmm. And after I wrote that book, I started working with women, and the same problems kept coming up all the time.
Okay.
At the same time, I was working as a biology professor. So I started looking into this from a biological standpoint, because we're biological creatures. It should make sense. But some of the things that we were doing doesn't make sense. And that's how it all started. And I thought it would be a very simple process, but I've been working on it for over 3 years now. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty complicated, but now I think I've made enough sense of it.
Okay, that is awesome. Now, some of the pieces that really just stuck out, we're going to get to those a little later in the interview, but just to give our listening audience some information, the 2D, 3D, 2D, 4D effect, how to pick a successful man, pheromones, and fear or love, which are just fascinating to me when you sit down and think about it. But the book itself, considering that today is Valentine's Day and all of the good stuff that goes along with it, give me some information about the whole chocolate thing.
Well, chocolate is kind of fun. Chocolate has two chemicals in it that are precursors for hormones of dopamine and serotonin. Serotonin is our happy hormone. It makes us, if we eat chocolate, we feel good. That's the serotonin. The other one is the dopamine. And that is part of the brain that goes for, is involved in gambling, is part of the pleasure center. So when we eat a piece of chocolate, we're basically training our brain to say what's pleasurable and what makes us happy. But the thing about Valentine's Day and the man giving a woman chocolate, in a way, he's training her brain for her to think of him as being pleasurable and exciting and wanting to come back for more.
Don Massler gives interesting information about love. Today on Focus Talk, 89.3 WKKC. I'm Dennis Snipe. Is there a certain amount of time that these different pleasures will continue with different things that you do, such as chocolate or wearing red or the whole pleasure in a relationship?
Well, the first part of the relationship, or the beginning of the relationship, is the attraction phase, and that's pretty short-lived. We know if we're attracted to someone, and either we're going to, and you've probably felt this yourself, you may have seen a woman, and you may have been in a relationship already, but you can still be attracted to other people, and you may find a woman that's attractive. It can be instantaneous. She can walk past, you can be attracted, and it's over. Boom. Or if you're single and you're looking, the attraction could linger longer. And they conducted studies where they took people that were married in a relationship or married for over 20 years. And they realized that the love changes in the brain. However, those initial chemicals of the norepinephrine and some of the dopamine are still there. So it kind of adds on to it. So as we get deeper into love, it adds layers into our brain activity.
Okay. Now, can you get those particular feelings started once they've kind of tapered off, or you've been in a relationship for a long time? Because as you mentioned, it doesn't last for a long period of time for that attraction stage. And then you go into other stages of relationship. So what do you do at that particular point?
Well, there's actually 4 stages in love. So the first one is the attraction. The second one is the chase phase. And then the third one is where we fall in love. And that's the one that most people think about, where you want to be around the person all the time. And it's almost an insanity phase. Your serotonin level drops to the level of somebody with OCD. Your cortisol level rises, and you get very anxious. So when they leave you, you wonder where they are all the time. That phase of love lasts for about 2 years. And oftentimes, during that time period, people make commitments to each other, and then later on, it starts to wear off, and they wonder what happened. And at that point, that's where the love is actually changing in the brain. And you're not going to have that obsessive type of love anymore, but now you're moving into a warmer, safer, more comfortable type of love.
Okay.
And that can last a lifetime.
So now, in regular conversation, when you're bringing up these different points, is it believable initially? How do people respond? Is that true, or is that just something that people think about, or how do you introduce it to various audiences where they actually take it to heart?
Well, a lot of people, when I talk about it, they're like, "Oh, so that's what happened." Especially the insanity part. They're like, "Oh yeah, I know that. I remember that guy." They start connecting the dots in their own life, and you can see where they might have been attracted to someone, especially like the norepinephrine. That's part of our fight or flight response. So that's why we get all butterflies and giddy, and we can't eat, we can't sleep. That's just the beginning phase. Most people remember that from some part of their life, particularly like when they're a teenager. They remember that one. And then the dopamine, where they're trying to chase after someone, they can remember that, particularly if it was non-requited, because it becomes stronger and stronger. And I've talked to guys that chased after girls for a long time, and it actually produces some pleasure in the chase, and then it keeps them going. Oh yeah, that's what that was. So I usually get a lot of recognition when I start talking about the stages of love.
So now, do you think that helps an individual when they can actually identify the different stages, or identify what's going on when they're in the midst of it, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, I wonder why," or "How can I fix this?" Does it help?
I think it's critical to understand it, because if you think about it, not a lot of people, but there are people out there that think that the initial phase, that norepinephrine fight or flight response, that butterflies, that giddiness, they think that that's love. And they'll call it love at first sight. And a lot of people still want to believe in love at first sight. And I'll introduce that concept, and I'll usually get the response of, "Well, my uncle, twice removed on my mother's side, met his first wife, Ethel, and it was love at first sight, and they've been together for 50 years. Can you explain that?" So there's this thing that I can't, if I step on love at first sight, people get upset about that. So, but that misguided belief can get you in trouble. And the reason why it can get you in trouble is because if it's based on norepinephrine, which is part of the fight or flight response, it's based on a drama-based hormone. So in order to get that loving feeling back, you have to keep creating drama in the relationship. So you end up getting into these push-pull type relationships. They have these big fights, and then they come back down, and it's all this excitement and action that's going on just to get that feeling back. And if they understand that feeling should be changing into a different feeling, then they're less likely to be stuck in that turmoil.
Have you ever wondered why red is used for Valentine's Day, or why chocolate is given between lovers? Keep listening. Don Massler has interesting information on this funny little thing that we call love. Today on Focus Talk, 89.3 WKKC. I'm Dennis Snipe. Don, two things that you said that I have to go back and revisit. So you're telling me that there's no such thing as love at first sight?
Yes. If people have met, wait a minute, let me finish. If people have met and then they say it was love at first sight and they're still together 20 years later, all that means is that they went through the other phases effortlessly. They still went through the phases. They just didn't realize they were going through phases.
Oh, wow. Okay. And the second thing that you said, so there's no love at first sight. And then the second thing is that we have to have drama in our relationship in order to maintain?
No, if you're stuck, if you believe in the love at first sight philosophy, you believe in that hormone of norepinephrine. That's the fight or flight response. I'll give you a classic example.
Okay.
Remember Baywatch beauty Pamela Anderson?
Oh, yes.
She met her husband Tommy Lee.
Mm-hmm.
They met and married within 96 hours.
Wow.
They thought it was love at first sight. 3 days later, they met. 3 days later, they're married. They went through this tumultuous relationship, and it lasted for about 3 years. They had 2 children. At the end of the 3 years, they were still fighting. He ended up going to jail for 4 months because of the fights that they were having. When he got back out, they still reconnected because of all the drama. They believed it was love at first sight. He was quoted as saying, "We've only tried it 800 times. 801, here we go." That's the type of relationship that's based on that norepinephrine, because you're constantly trying to recreate that feeling of love at first sight, but it's the adrenaline, it's a fight or flight response. So you have to keep creating more drama in order to make the same feeling. If people understand that it's natural for that feeling to change and to go into something deeper, then they can let go of that belief and understand what's coming up.
Wow. So, Dawn, now looking into the science behind relationships. So does this mean that I need to reconstruct the way I go about the whole dating and marriage thing and look at it from a biological point of view? I can't follow my emotions and my feelings?
If your emotions and your feelings, and you've been doing a good job with it, by all means keep following it. But
okay.
if it gets you in trouble, you might want to look at the science of it.
Wow. Now, give me some more information about your book specifically.
Well, the book on the science of love, I'm still working on. Right now I've got some information that's out on my YouTube channel, which is Dawn Maslar TV, DAWNMASLAR TV, and I'm putting information out. I'm still working on the book. My first book was From Heartbreak to Heart's Desire, Developing a Healthy GPS Guy Picking System. And that was for women that keep picking the wrong men. What I realized from that was that we have subconscious beliefs that cause us to make mistakes. And that's what started this whole looking into the science of it. Because our brain is built in layers. And we have a subconscious layer, and then we have a more evolved conscious layer. But when we're in the dating process, guess which one takes over? It's largely subconscious. That's why we go with our emotions.
Okay. All right. Now, so you talked about the young lady or the woman who picks the bad boy. So is it the same with men who pick bad girls?
Men they don't usually pick bad girls. You try to rescue women. And that's where they get themselves in trouble. And a lot of it is based on subconscious beliefs or training that you don't realize that's going on. I hate to say call it training, but it's usually like family history. And you'll end up repeating old patterns because it's subconsciously ingrained. It's learned behavior.
So the fella is not supposed to be the Prince Charming and rescue the damsel in distress and be, what she has been hoping for and dreaming for and da-da-da-da-da. That's not correct?
Exactly. When the music starts playing and somebody walks around the corner with a white horse, you might want to pause. This might not be the right thing to do. But yeah, but a lot of people still have that belief that officer and a gentleman type of thing where you're going to rush in and pick her up and scoop her, carry her out of her mundane life into this wonderful life. And that belief gets us in trouble.
Oh, wow.
We don't really if we understand the science behind it, then we can make better informed decisions. And if you're a man and you're chasing after women that are in distress, hoping that if you somehow save them, they will love you forever, then you're going to keep picking up wounded women that still have some work to do.
Today we're talking to Don Massler, who gives interesting information about love on Focus Talk with Dennis Snipe, 89.3 WKKC. This is really a revelation because you think about, so many different things in relationships or in love, and you listen to the Lionel Richie song, Love Will Conquer All, and you're hoping that that's correct. But basically, it's all, for lack of a better definition, reptilian. It's just,
The beginning parts are definitely reptilian. The news is that we have evolved and our brain has evolved. And when we look at fMRI of people that have been together in loving relationships for long periods of time, we see the brain activity in the prefrontal cortex. That's the thinking part of the brain, and that's the last to evolve. And that's what we call true love. The cool part is that it shares neurons with unconditional love and maternal love. So this is love where once we get there, it helps us love not only the person we're with, but loves ourselves and loves everybody around us. It's a more holistic, whole brain love. But it takes a while to get there. And that's the whole purpose of why I was writing the book, is that that's the one we really want to get to. And we get caught up in the other parts, the phases that are not even have anything to do with love yet. The second phase is all about dopamine, which is the sexual attraction.
Now, Don, why are we a sucker for a good love story?
Women particularly are a sucker for a good love story because we have what are called mirror neurons. And our mirror neurons that's where the cool thing about mirror neurons is like I can watch you do something, and by watching you, I can learn how to do it. And you've probably done that yourself. And that's one of the reasons why we've evolved so rapidly as human beings, because I can watch my mother do something and I can learn how to do it by watching her. So these mirror neurons help us to learn things. And it's almost as if we are doing it ourselves. Therefore, watch a movie, a love story like that, emotional roller coaster, stuff that's happening to me. So when I get to the end, it's like I'm falling in love all over again.
Okay. So I'm living my life vicariously through the character or whoever is telling the story?
Well, you have a hormonal response. Just as if you watched a scary movie, you would get nervous. You're having a different type of hormonal response when you're watching a love story. So that satisfaction at the end, you actually feel that. So women are producing more oxytocin, which is the cuddle hormone, and that makes us feel good.
Okay. Now, my mind is racing a mile a minute because I'm subconsciously going through each point that you made, and I'm trying to match it up in my own personal life saying, is this me? Is this me? No, that's me. So what about fear or love?
We talked about the reptilian brain, the subconscious brain, and then the prefrontal cortex. In the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of our brain, our thinking cap, that's where the activity is when we are in love, in true love, or in unconditional love, or any type of love. That's where the activity is. But when the fight or flight response gets kicked in, that's fear, the activity gets pulled back into our reptilian brain, and we become instinctual. So, because we're all concerned about survival at that point, so we're looking for a place to run, or we're looking for a way to fight or get out of whatever's happening. So you can't have fear and love at the same time, because the neural activity is going to be different. And they have done research that shows that stress will actually weaken those connections to the prefrontal cortex. So if you're somebody who's always anxious all the time, it makes it more difficult for you to have love or to be in a loving relationship.
So if they cannot coexist, then you're just in one or the other. You
would usually be in one or the other. I mean, there's some overlap, but if At the very moment where you have fear, you can't be in love. And you've probably experienced this yourself. And a lot of people experience it. They just understand what's going on. If you're in a loving relationship, but that person says something to you that threatens you, or maybe they threaten your ego, or they said something that hurt your feelings, you pull back, or all of a sudden you start defending yourself. And sometimes you can almost lapse into this phase where you're like, where did this go? What happened? Because you start arguing with it. In this wonderful, loving relationship, all of a sudden breaks down to this like furious fight. I don't know if you probably never experienced that, but I know a few people that have.
Okay. Dawn, this is absolutely fascinating information. And give us your website again.
It's DawnMaslar.com, DawnMaslar.com. And then I'm on Dawn Maslar TV on YouTube. And
so we can go there and get a more detailed explanation over all of the particular points that we've talked about.
Yeah, and if you go onto the YouTube, you can subscribe, and every time I send out a new video, you'll get a thing that says it's on.
And so in the meantime, we can subscribe and then wait for the book to come out.
Yeah, the old book is out, and then I'll give you more information as the new book comes available.
Okay, sounds good. Dawn, you have done a remarkable job on the research and bringing a lot of issues to the forefront and basically allowing us to know why we do what we do when it comes to love.
Thank you, Dennis.
Dawn, thank you so very much. You have been an incredible guest, and I look forward to talking with you in the future.
Thank you.
Take care now.
All right, you